Hi, my name's Elaine. My channel concerns adult children of alcoholics, which is primarily based on this book. I am not affiliated with adultchildren.org, but I do recommend you get a book on their site before you do any work on your steps. It gives you all the terms, it gives you the examples, goes through all the 12 steps. It's a wonderful resource, and if you were involved in any meetings, you're going to probably read this at the meeting, like in a round robin sort of situation. Some groups use other books that are related to it, but this is the big red book. It's the Bible. For the ACA community. And ACA, it's not just adult children of alcoholics. It is and dysfunctional families. And if you've been following this series, you can see there's so many other reasons that you might want to do the 12 steps. And what I'm doing mostly with these videos is covering the workbook. Today we're on step 4. We're on exercise 2 because my previous video dealt with exercise 1. So it does involve looking at the 14 traits of a dysfunctional adult child. So by all means, please go back if you need to catch up, if you're behind. So this is not starting at the beginning of step 4. It's kind of like one exercise in already. Okay, we are going to cover 4 different exercises today. We're going to try with the next video. I don't know if I ever got as far as where I'm going to get today. On the previous videos about 3 years ago when I attempted this, I gave up. I got involved in other things in my life, and so I stopped making them. And I'm going to continue through this time. This is my commitment. I'm going to try every Friday to get through this with you. So we're going to talk about exercise 2, family secrets, exercise 3, shame inventory. I'll stand up here. Exercise 4, abandonment, and exercise 5, harms inventory. The harms inventory is going to be turning the lens onto you, and that's kind of what makes it a little bit difficult and humbling. So we'll start with exercise 2, family secrets, and that is something that you want to get your notebook out and you want to look at your family image versus the reality. That does not mean that everything about your family is a lie. It could be that the image that your neighbors, that your friends, when they would come over, whatever image they had was a little bit different, or maybe a lot different than what happened behind closed doors. So we'll go over this very quickly. It is almost every dysfunctional family has a story or image that family members present to friends and outsiders. For example, the Rodriguez family believes in education and challenge. We never give up, the family says. Another family says the Wilson family works hard and we stick together no matter what comes our way. Now, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say your family, the image is that we have so much love for our kids, and our kids come first, and it's all we ever think about is our kids. And in fact, what's happening, that's what it looks like. That's the veneer to outsiders and to friends, that there's so much love in that family, and they're always expressing the love. But instead, you're getting beat or you're getting shamed every day. I'll give you an example of what might happen. Maybe you have bruises, and you have, or even a broken bones from being beat up by your parents, or by even a brother or a sister or uncle or whoever's living in the house. But you can't reveal that. You can't let that go outside because it will wreck the image. And so when you do have this happen, we can't let anyone see that. So we write a note to the school. The reason my child's been absent for how many days, how many weeks, is because she had a really bad flu. We really wanted to take care of her at home and make sure she was okay. And in fact, it's just like we need to wait till all the bruises disappear and the bones heal or whatever it is. So that seems like a kind of an extreme thing, but in an alcoholic family, that's exactly what it might look like. Or the image is that we have a hardworking family, and they are very responsible, and one of the family members looks from the outside, comes out the front door dressed nice and looking even rested, goes to work, works hard. Everybody at the job site, sees this really functioning person who then has to drink the rest of the day after work is over, maybe to cover up their own pain and shame, which we'll talk about today. But they bring home the anger or the violence or the withdrawal or whatever, and that's the reality, not this like hardworking, everything's perfect, everything's put together. And I'm sure you can come up with a lot of examples. So we're not trying to, it's not like we have to tell our story to the world. It's not like our family and friends need to know. It might even be appropriate just to kind of have a slightly altered explanation to protect somebody. Maybe there was a suicide in the family, or somebody attempted, and that's not everybody's business. But maybe you're supposed to put some other story out there, and even if it may seem right and appropriate, it doesn't mean it's easy to carry, that we have these secrets, these things that have happened in our family, and I have to present this other thing. And that's a difficult burden for a kid. Now, sometimes it can be presented in such a way, in a caring and a loving way, but if a child is very young, they can't really articulate the differences between what we want to go out here to the public and what we're really hiding. And so that is like part of like shame and other kind of things that we try to deny. So we're in denial, and sometimes we begin to believe the false image rather than the reality. So that's one of the things you want to do today. I actually want to work through these very quickly, because for some reason my computer's freezing up. It's doing okay so far. I've got a little ice pack thing behind it, and I think that might work. Okay, we'll see. Otherwise, we'll try. Okay, exercise 3 is the shame inventory. And that can be very much related to the family secret. So, as you can see, I have like a little arrow kind of showing this can result in this. So, shame. Why would you be shamed? Well, there might be statements. A lot of times it is words, and those words hurt quite a bit. And those words might shame our appearance. Maybe we're not the prettiest one in the family. Why didn't you come out like so-and-so? Or you're so clumsy, you're so stupid, you keep messing up, something about your speech. Maybe you're not as articulate. Maybe you slur your words, or you stutter, or you have a lisp, or some kind of thing, or you don't use the right grammar, and you're shamed for those things. That can happen. Your mannerisms, like why do you always bite your tongue when you're thinking about something, or why are you always squinting like that? Aren't you wearing your contacts? Or it can be little insignificant things, but they can be things that we really carry throughout our lives, things we begin to believe about ourselves. You're clumsy, you're stupid, you're not as pretty as so-and-so, you're not as smart as so-and-so. And it can also come from friends. It can come from the kids on the playground. It can come from teachers. Like, your big brother was much better at this than you are. You need to work a lot harder, because it's kind of like we expect more out of you since your brother could do this. Like, that's a horrible thing. If a teacher ever says that, that's an awful legacy to have to follow a different individual. Even if they're from your own family, that people are different. And so the shaming can be, I want to say well-intentioned, but I don't really think it's well-intentioned to say that. But there's a lot of ways in which the shame sticks. It doesn't go away easily. So I know I'm rushing through these, but the shame inventory, again, it doesn't give you a lot of room. Here you go. See, on the workbook, it's not meant to give you a lot of room. It's a workbook that you need to have like a journal or something and really list those things. Like maybe list the actual things that were said to you. Okay, and it could also be just like some message that was communicated to you because your nose is too big. It's like, oh, someone might push on it or push your chin's too long or something. There's all kinds of ways to shame that you don't even really have to, or just somebody leering at you like, you put on some weight. That's all different. There's different ways to shame. And so make a list. That's another inventory. We can go through these like slower, but I think you got the idea. Is the more you write down, the better. And can you talk about things that are more current? Yes. The only thing I would say is at this point, why we talk about adult children is because as children, we couldn't do much about it. We couldn't just say, hey, I'm going, and drive away or, quit or something like that because we had to stay in our home. That's where we were, we had guardians. Those were our legal guardians. Could be foster home or whatever it was. You didn't have a whole lot. Like if you said something, it might be to alert anybody. It might actually endanger you. So as a kid, you had to put up with a lot of things. It seems like you should have had more rights, but you didn't. Now, I'm going to go into that because there's a whole, like what's going on currently in the world is just regarding parents and rights and children's rights and everything. I'll get to that, but I have varied ways of thinking about it. But you're dealing right now not with your parents so much as what happened to you. You're focusing on the harms. You get to do that in these early steps. Okay, you get to talk about how you were harmed, and that's very appropriate. Now, in your adult life, you had more of an opportunity to walk away. You have more of an opportunity to say no. But because your childhood trauma kind of stuck to you, you didn't get maybe problem solving, or you didn't understand how to avoid certain situations that tend to repeat themselves. So maybe you even picked somebody who's a shaming kind of a partner, or maybe going back to exercise 2, somebody who expected you to keep secrets about their behavior. So you're kind of continuing that family secret thing. So these all go together, all these inventories today. So write down as much as you possibly can those shaming things. All right. It seems it's a little painful. Take some time, rest in between these exercises, and get yourself a little reward. I have today, I have my little mandarin, so I can reward myself after I'm done with this video. All right, the next one is exercise 4 is the abandonment list. And what you're going to talk about is both physical and emotional abandonment. Now, it's really very classic if you have an alcoholic parent, the parent's not really present to you, that's an emotional abandonment right there. Or the parent is a workaholic. They could be in the house or outside the house. If they're outside the house, they're workaholic. Maybe they stay late, and that's a kind of an abandonment when you're kind of looking forward to seeing them or them coming home or whatever. But it can be just right there in the household. They don't leave physically, but emotionally not present for you. Maybe the family motto is, children should be seen and not heard. That is true in some families. It can also have cultural implications, and if this is not comfortable to you anymore, you may have to confront it. So you're looking at abandonment, both physical and emotional. And emotional abandonment can be very painful because a parent's right there. And what results from that is that parent or guardian is no longer a safe place for you to go. So let's say you cut yourself accidentally and you're bleeding. Instead of getting help, or you might get help, but you're going to get shamed. You're going to get shamed to the moon and back. It's going to be, why are you so stupid? You're so clumsy. You've done this before. What do you think I have all day to take care of you every time you cut your finger or you do something? that's the kind of thing that you might have heard. So it doesn't, you get to where, no, I'm not gonna go to mom or dad or my guardian when I get hurt. You try to hide things like that, or let's say you're having trouble, you're binging or something, because this could also manifest in that kind of thing where you binge and purge. You may have anorexia or bulimia, and it wouldn't maybe get so out of hand if you had that parent that you could talk to about this like early on to give you a healthy sense of body image or whatever it is. Now, this program is not about like getting even with your parents or shaming them or leaving them or abandoning them. Sometimes it's appropriate to do that, but we know that we want to feel safe. And we know that when we're kids, we don't know everything. We don't know why we mess up. We don't always understand what we should have done instead or how to take precautions. So when we don't find our parents to be a safe place for us, that's the result, okay? That is the result of shaming. And we need to confront that too when we feel, and what's going to happen if you've been shamed a lot is isolation. You're going to isolate. Or it can be inferiority. Maybe you never attempt to do great things in your life or the things that you'd like to do, or even things that you're really good at, but you won't believe it because you got the message that you weren't good at that or you weren't good at anything. And so, and the opposite can happen. You could go and be a perfectionist and try to do everything perfect, and you do everything mostly perfect, but in your mind you keep hearing the shaming, so you don't really believe it, or it's not good enough for you. You have to keep redoing something. You could be compulsive because you have a shaming voice. So we really want to look at that shame and abandonment. And so that is abandonment. There are extreme cases where parents don't come home for days. Kids get left by themselves in their home or their apartment. There's abandonment of, just having to stay with relatives all the time because parents are, involved in their own dramas, and or maybe they have narcotics problems or something. So that's, a physical abandonment. And you see how these all go together. They're like family secrets sometimes. There's shaming and there's abandonment. And that all is like flowing one thing into the other. Okay? So now we're on, see how I zipped through that. I hope that's okay, because that's what your work is. Your work is to take this book. This is where you take responsibility. This is where you fix things, or the best you can. This is where you recover. So we wouldn't be doing recovery if all we're doing is like trying to shame and blame like our parents for what they did. Absolutely get that out of our system in this program, in our journals, in a safe way. But we don't get to keep like using those things anymore for our own dysfunction. And that's why step 5, I have to check, step 5 is important, because what do we do when we don't address the shame and the abandonment and the secrets and all these things, is that we begin to spill over onto others. It is what is called intergenerational, can you see it? Nope, that's not it. Intergenerational transfer, okay? Your parents might have picked up their dysfunctional behavior, of course, from their parents or aunts and uncles or whoever were their guardians. You might pass it on to your children and the next generation. So that is why we do ACA, so that we don't continue to push this on to the next generation. And when I realized this myself, like when I had kids, and I, wanted to deny it. That's one of our problems in ACA. It's the reason we have to come to ACA, is we move out of denial. Well, the harms worksheet is for you to see that you have harmed others. You're not, I don't want you to feel like, there's some people that say, I just don't want to hear about that. Like, I'm working on healing myself. I don't need to hear like what I'm doing. It doesn't help. It really does, though. It really helps. So we have the harms worksheet, and here's what it looks like in the yellow notebook. It does give you a lot of room. Okay, unlike the other ones, it actually has a lot of room for you to put how you've harmed others. And I've got a big representation of it for you, but let me read what it says. Okay, exercise 5. In this exercise, we inventory how we have abandoned or neglected other people in our lives. If we have children, and we could be looking after children, we could be teachers, we could, I don't know, harms to other people that we don't need to be harming. Excuse me. We also look at how our actions and words served as the transfer mechanism for the disease of family dysfunction. Okay. Many of us have said it will never happen to me, but it did. Wow, sobering to hear that. And the generational transfer is difficult. In fact, this might be a time for you, if you've been working the steps, you made that family tree way back, and you traced in the family tree aunts, uncles, grandparents, your parents, sisters, brothers, their own dysfunction. Or it could also be those secrets, okay, related to, but who, like, where were the suicides or attempted suicides in your family, and the alcoholism and the mental illness and the stuff that kind of continued on. It was here and then it moved on through the generation to where you are, and you're in danger, are already possibly passing that on to your kids. So that's not helpful at all. And that's why we do recovery. We do it for ourselves so we can be happier, or at least, I don't want to promise like eternal happiness after you do the 12 steps. It just gives you tools to function and to be happier if that's what you're able to manage. And I hope that that's the case. But how can we do that if we're harming others? And this is not an accusation, it's just that it's likely, and it may not be the same harms that you got as a child from your parents, but it could manifest in other ways because there's stored resentment. We talked about resentment. Resentment is something we've stored. Sometimes we feel it's righteous indignation and we deserve to have that resentment, but that's really just makes us sick. We sometimes we wonder, why do I get sick so much? Well, it can be from stored resentment and stored trauma from our childhood. It is really good if you want. I'm going to talk about this in another video. I'm going to talk about the autonomic nervous system and how this connects to it, but that's a different video. We'll just say you have resentment, you keep it inside. It manifests in so many ways, and it's not healthy. So when we learn to let that go, we're much better. Think how great if we can talk to others and make sure that we don't harm them anymore, or that we apologize for the harms that we've done. Now, we don't have to do that in this step. We're not going to go out and make amends and confess and everything to everybody right now. That's not where we are in the steps. We will be, and we'll talk about when that's appropriate and when it's not, but we want to recover, and this is part of it. Okay, so I'm going to go over very easy to do this part. We're going to talk about who we harmed. So maybe you just want to go through and list all the names of the people we've harmed. We really feel some kind of guilt or something because we know we transferred those bad things that we experienced as children, or we did something that manifested that. We want to put the event, talk about the results or the aftermath of having harmed that person, and then how did that connect to a childhood memory. So then we do see, wow, there is a transfer. All right, so as a parent, I can speak from experience about this. I sat in an ACA meeting and we got to this part of the red book All right, so because we do these read arounds in the ACA meetings, I guess they're still doing it that way. We try to read through this whole long book. So we don't spend that long, but you spend every meeting, you read a little bit, you pass it around, people read a little bit, and it's very old school. And then after maybe 20 minutes or something, you go on with like sharing and stuff. So might be good to just list all the names first. Leave a lot of room so that you can put it all in there. By doing that, you are doing the first step. You're acknowledging, you're moving out of denial that you intergenerationally are passing on dysfunction. Okay, so I want to remind you, take gentleness breaks. Reward yourself with a piece of fruit, helps your blood sugar, drink some water in between these exercises because they're emotionally draining and it might be kind of hard stuff to sit. It might actually be a relief to you. You might even cry. So one of the reasons I got really broke down is I realized that I had intergenerationally this is for my gentleness break. I'm going to have a little yummy little nectarine tangerine or mandarin or whatever, but it's like, I love it. Isn't it a beautiful bright orange against all this other kind of dull colors? All right, treat yourself in between these exercises and drink water, lots of water. So anyway, I guess I don't want to talk about this. I'm coming up with reasons not to, but I think I was a good mom, and I always told myself that story. Oh, I'm a good mom, and I worked hard, and I was a single mom, and so I get extra points for that and stuff. I was also a teacher, so it was like a mom to other people. Some people actually called me mom, sometimes to be funny, sometimes it was a joke, sometimes they really kind of meant it, in a way. I was that figure, but I wasn't like this perfect person. And I hadn't worked the steps until I was in my 50s. I didn't even understand what the steps were. I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous. I had no idea what they did there. And I didn't even know there was a group called Adult Children of Alcoholics. And I had been raising my kids, and now they were teenagers. And we had difficulties, I really, I struggled, between working all day and teaching and then going home to teenagers. And I said things that I resented, and I did things, not resented, I regretted, and I did things. And when they were little, I lost my temper a lot, sometimes I spanked them and stuff. And I'm not really I was, a peace activist. You can't have these kind of inconsistent things. And there were better things that I could do to help my kids to do well. And I was a good mom. I won't take that away. I'll just say that some things that I did, the kids remembered. Sometimes they remembered in a conflated, exaggerated way, because when we're very emotional, it feels worse than it is. But it could also be just as bad as what they remember. So here's an example. If you ever had somebody tell you, stop yelling at me, but you're actually not yelling at them, but they're already so traumatized that they hear you explaining yourself or you just trying to talk to them, and it sounds like in their mind like yelling, and it's not yelling. So we get used to shaming, and we get used to the pain to where we see things in a certain light. That's probably very true. It's very true for the person that feels that they're being yelled at, even if they're not, okay, because of the harms that they feel inside. So it's not really ours to judge, like, oh, well, you're wrong about that. You just know, you want to be able to say, I realize I've harmed you, and, I want to make it up to you. I want to say I'm sorry. I want forgiveness. Right now, we're not on that step, but I'm just saying that is what we're leading to, all right, with a harms worksheet. So if I embarrassed my kids, in front of their friends, for instance, that really shames the kid. That makes the kid feel really bad. It makes the kid not want to invite people over. So let's just talk about that. Let's see, or to go for help or whatever it is. Those I harmed, what I did, and the results. So like I said, if you did something that embarrassed your kids, first of all, they don't want to come to you for help. They stop believing in you. If you do something like this to a friend, they might just quit being your friend. Some of these things are really, really hard, and the temptation is to blame them for abandoning you. But they're just doing what they feel safe to do because they've been harmed. Now, I think a lot of us in ACA are not horrible, terrible people, because I think sometimes moving out of denial and facing these things is a pretty brave act, and you probably really want to address it. There are people that will never, ever be willing to talk about anything that they did. The ego is too great. It's too much humility required. It's absolutely humility is required in this. So, okay, harms worksheet. Work through it. Now, there's one last piece of this, all right? And that is a childhood memory. When we think of harms that we've done to others, we might want to see if it resembles something done to us. It could be one of these things that we talked about here, like the family secrets or the shame or abandonment, okay? Because those things, I don't know, why do we do it? Well, we didn't maybe get the good examples. Maybe we didn't get the help that we needed. And so we just passed it on. We didn't learn correct functional behavior or loving behavior. We didn't learn to love ourselves, and we feel bad about ourselves, and we push it on to the next generation. I don't say be permissive and let your kids or whoever you're responsible for just to run you ragged and do whatever they want, but always try to accompany correction with love. And it's a delicate balance. Kids have to know we have standards, we have values, and even though we talked about this earlier, expectations, well, we have some expectations. There's nothing wrong with that. But we also have to understand that, some things are going to stick, and that child, if they don't learn to work through their own issues, they're going to repeat the patterns, and we really don't want those patterns repeated. Okay, so I feel pretty excited because what we did is we got through 4 exercises. Now, you maybe didn't, because there's a lot of homework for you to do. So you want to get that notebook. It looks like a small amount of things. You're starting on page 82 for what we're talking about, and you're going to page 85. But it actually will take you some time to do it. Now, there's one last thing I'm going to leave you with. It's called the gentleness break. We talked about how when we're done with something, or if it's just getting too much, then what we need to do, we need to drink some water, relax, have a little piece of fruit or something, maybe take a nice walk. If the weather's cool, it's not today, it's really warm. I'm wearing this because of bad hair, but it's really, really warm right now. Okay, so gentleness break. The ACA 4th step involves a balanced look at our family of origin and our own behavior and thoughts. The emotions, events, and self-blame stirred by this step can seem overwhelming for some. Yes? Do you agree? As you work step 4, we urge you to be rigorously honest. So you do need to do that, holding nothing back, but we also remind you to be gentle with yourself. Okay, so you might want to, well, let's connect this to the promises, because the promises are really a great thing. That's like you have the problem, you have the solution, and the promise. We're doing the solution is the 12 steps. The promise is what your life is going to look like after. So in relation to this, this is why we do go through all this. Promise 11. With help from our ACA support group, we will slowly release our dysfunctional behaviors. So that's pretty wonderful if we can learn to release them. And that's the promise of it. That's why we keep going. Denial begins to be too difficult to do. And there is a 4th step prayer. Again, it does not have to require a belief in God. It could be just a belief in the universe, or universal consciousness, or the adult self that we aspire to be, the happier person, the more functional person. Divine Creator, help me to be rigorously honest and to care for myself during this 4th step process. Let me practice gentleness and not abandon myself on the spiritual journey. Help me remember that I have attributes and that I can ask for forgiveness. I am not alone. I can ask for help. So do that. Please give yourself a break. If you want to read the 4-step prayer, if you want to try to memorize it off my video here, just so that you know you're not abandoning yourself if you keep going, but that you also can get forgiveness for it. Okay, stored anger will be our next video, exercise 6. There is a resentment worksheet. So when we store it, we have the resentment. So a lot of stuff's going to seem like it repeats, but it's actually going deeper or kind of moving it along towards where we want to go. Relationships, that one's going to take a little bit of time. And that one is about expectations and your dependent behavior and how the relationships ended. That's a bit tough. Sexual abuse inventory, that one's very difficult to get through. There's a whole sheet for that one. Some people just won't do it, but it manifests in so many ways if you don't work through it. Denial inventory is exercise 9. Laundry list reflection, my behavior. Post-traumatic stress disorder, body work. PTSD worksheet, see, goes on. I think feelings exercise, praise work. Well, thank goodness, by exercise 12, we get to do praise work. And it talks about finding an ACA sponsor. I don't know how many people are becoming sponsors these days. It really requires somebody that absolutely went through the steps. But some people work as a group, and they get several people together, could come out of a group that meets weekly, but a smaller group, and you work with each other on these, and it's wonderful. And sometimes that's maybe the way it works best. And then we'll get to step 5, admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of wrongs. So I think at this point, we're not necessarily talking to the people we harmed. It is actually us talking to God, or to, like I said, the adult that you want to be. And then we are maybe our sponsor, because it might be that we go to a sponsor first, or in our group, and we actually share these things. So we are going to eventually get to talking to other people that we've harmed, but that's a ways off, so you can relax. Okay, so that's the end for today. There will be another video. I don't know how I could fast track through step 6 all the way to, what was it, 12 or something like that. I'm going to try, because these are too long otherwise, and you're going to be doing it in the workbook, so you're going to be fine. If you're actually working the steps, you'll get through all this on your own. And I'm just kind of facilitating where I can. Anyway, thank you. Thanks for listening. And I hope you'll tune in. Please, if you will like, that helps me. And we get more circulation of this. I'm not monetized, at least, not at this point. And I'm just doing it to help others, because I think that's like one of the steps here is to start, offering what I've learned to others. And anyway, if you are not a subscriber, if you would subscribe, look back at the other videos. I have my favorite one is the Serenity Prayer. It helps us get through the present day. If we're in a state of crisis and we're not quite ready to look at that kind of those steps and that long-term thing, we might want to understand through the Serenity Prayer what we can change and what we can't, and how we accept the present time and how we discern what to work on and what to say. I can't fix people that are not me, or I can't fix the past, or whatever. So take a look at that. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate you tuning in, and you have a wonderful day. Okay, bye-bye.